everybody. Thanks very much for coming along. How are we all feeling? Good? Yeah? Hello, boys and girls. Thanks very much for coming in. So I just wanted to talk to you today about this little thing called Certified Technical Architect. How many of you know what that is? Okay, a few. That's really good. You must also then know it's the mother of all Salesforce certs, right? Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask a quick question just to kind of understand my audience a bit better. So how many of you, just by show of hands, would consider yourselves to be admins? Okay. And how many of you would consider yourselves to be developers? Okay. Out of all of you, how many of you would consider yourselves to be architects? Okay. Any admins who are my admins who say they're architects? Okay, there's 3. That's good. That's good. So when I tried that one before, it's been in a room full of admins and a room full of developers, and what we've ended up having to try and do is explain what that means when we talk about architects. But there are very few that have pursued the mighty CTA certification. It might surprise you to know that there are only between 250 and 300 CTAs in the entire world, Salesforce CTAs. Salesforce themselves will not tell us exactly how many there are. They just give us a range. And they're okay with me saying that there are roughly 5% of that volume are women. Okay? We know that there are 12 girls in the entire world who are CTAs. So why bother with it, right? Well, I'm here to talk to you about why not. If you have been doing this a while, if you're thinking about the bigger picture when you design solutions, whether you're thinking about declarative plus code or a mixture of the two with a bit of business process, come on in. Hello, everybody. That's nice. There's lots more ladies coming in. Hey. So I'm here to talk to you today about to try and understand, get you to understand within yourselves what's holding you back. If you have considered doing this before and have put it off due to client work, or maybe I'm just not quite ready for that just yet, I'm here to talk to you about why so many people are now working their way through this particular path. Okay. The other thing I want to talk to you about is how you don't have to do this on your own. That we can all help each other, no matter who we work for and how we work to achieve this goal. Hi, welcome. What's your name? Come on in, Olivier. Take a seat. Okay, so those of you who know me, hello, nice to see you again. Those of you who don't know me, my name's Gemma, and I work for Blue Wolf as a solution architect manager, and I've been Salesforcing for about 10 years. And one of the other things that I have been doing is working towards my own architect journey and writing about it and generally shouting it out across the treetops. So many of you looking at this slide would find this quite familiar, right? So when you're looking at your Salesforce organization, you are thinking about your application design, your code, your sharing, how you're managing your data volumes, how you're going to get the right data into the system so that people can interact with it and make use of it. How are you going to make your solutions mobile? How are you going to allow your solutions to interact with external users in the community? But then underpinning all of that as well comes your 3 areas of your people skills areas. One is your system governance. How do I manage changes so that I don't go hiring 50 admins and they'll go creating 50 custom fields that do the same thing? How do I manage my data to make sure that my data is accurate, reliable? We all want accurate and reliable data, right? So as an architect, you've got to be thinking about that as well. And also the ability to manage expectations and get the very best that you can from your stakeholders. Asking the right questions, making sure you've got the right people in the room, that those people are empowered to make the right decisions, because they will ultimately inform the design that you put together. And the design that you put together isn't just this. It isn't just this. It's all of that. That's what you're doing as an architect. So the interesting misconception I've seen in the year that I've been, preaching this, is that many people seem to feel that the architect path is for developers, and that developers are the only ones who could possibly follow this path, that they know how to code, they know how the system works at a very deep technical level. And I actually want to tell you that you don't have to do that. You don't have to have a development background to acknowledge yourself as an architect. You can do it as an administrator. I can read code, I can get the gist of what's going on with the code. I have my Platform Developer 1 certification. I know what bad code looks like, but I don't write code. I don't want to write code. And that's okay, because I can get, people like Martin to write it for me. So, okay, he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to do it either. So those of you who are already thinking about all of these things together, even if you are sitting writing an Apex class or building a Lightning component, if you're having conversations actively with the rest of your team and with your customers about how that data is going to be used and what benefits it's going to give to the business or the charity that you're working with, then you're already thinking like an architect. It takes experience as well as knowledge. It's easy for people to look at this as well and think, I've got to go off and get all the certifications that I can possibly get, and that's going to make me an architect. Newsflash, no. It's a combination of those things. There are some highly experienced people in this room, and with that experience, with the knowledge that you gain from working on Trailhead, from implementing projects within your own company, from implementing solutions across different companies in a consultancy role, you are learning the practical application of that knowledge. And that's exactly what you need in order to navigate this choppy landscape here. So yeah, shameless plug for Game of Thrones, April next year. Anyway, it's April now apparently, but anyway. So the purpose of this is just to explain, obviously, how do you navigate this landscape when you've got the learning opportunities presented by Trailhead, presented by practical project experience, and how does that project experience send you off in different directions? And then there's Trailhead as well. So if you're at the beginning of your career and you know that perhaps you want architecture to be where you want your future, perhaps in 10 years' time or 5 years' time or whatever, then knowing and understanding how you can gain extra knowledge to guide you and assist you on that path is really important. Now, when you're working down the project route, if you are customer facing, you could argue it's slightly easier because you can say to your manager and your career coach, okay, for example, I would like to work on some integrations. Can you please expose me to an integrations environment and put me on a project where the delivery is integrations? Now, you can't necessarily always influence that unless you work for like Salesforce or IBM or something, where there's lots and lots and lots of projects coming in at different types. But what you can do is you can navigate your own career path through that. And it's actually okay to change jobs every few years, especially in a fluid environment like Salesforce, where, if you were to say I'm not saying just all go and hand your notice in tomorrow, please don't do that. And definitely don't say that I said to do that. But there's one advantage that hopping around can have, is that exposure to different projects. And as an architect, if you're looking to pursue the CTA, you will need to have that exposure to enterprise projects in order to help you understand how all of the different facets fall together. It's unlikely that a two-man charity is going to want to implement single sign-on, for example. But in an enterprise environment, you could learn single sign-on, and you could learn continuous delivery and continuous integration as well. So there are lots of different advantages. So what are architects? They are creative people, they are teachers, they are fixers, they are problem solvers, and they are always designing, always creative, they always think of the bigger picture, and they're always learning. That is the absolute key to this. Some of the best architects that I have ever worked with are the ones that say, do you know what, there's this new thing that's out, I really should learn that. The worst architects are the ones that argue with you because they believe in the information as it was 2-3 years ago. And, we've all been in those situations, right? And we've all thought about that. So I think one of the things that Leah said this morning in her keynote, which really resonated with me, was about how the best way to learn is to teach. And the CTA is exactly what that's all about. Even though you're not necessarily teaching, it's an RFP type situation, a request for a proposal situation, where you are effectively using your knowledge to teach that panel why you have decided to to solve their scenario with the solution that you have, and to be able to justify it as well. So as an architect, you see why you need the experience to do that, because a lot of that is based around people and learning to navigate people, learning how to get ideas across very quickly in short bursts that make sense with the right breadth and the right depth of information that you're giving. And you can't learn that from a textbook. So I'm going to give you a very brief life story around why I'm here and why I have been asked to come and talk to you about this path. 2 years ago, if you had told me that I was going to be going for my certified technical architect, I would have just gone, no, never. That's not me. That's not my end goal. That's certainly not something I can do. Surely only developers can do that, right? And I was very wrong. So I started off with a technical background, and I did my worst A-level subject at university. I was best at English, second at sociology, and third in IT. But I looked at the options I had available to me when I was choosing university courses, and I thought, okay, well, computers are definitely growing. It's something I enjoy doing. Had a bad year. It would have been a better result if I hadn't had a bad year at school. I'll go ahead and do the IT. That's where the money is. And at the time, people would say to me now, like, what would you tell yourself 20 years ago? I'd say, go and do the IT degree. But that was because it was best for me at the time. Back then, pre-2008, when I was much better looking and younger, I was in charge of pulling data from spreadsheets and making it look beautiful, like debatably beautiful. But effectively, it was querying lots of different systems. I learned SQL, really liked that. It was good. Hated Visual Basic. And I was basically pushing statistics out for an examinations board. I had a business and IT degree. And then one day, when I decided to move from the Midlands of England down to the London area to work for an airline, needed to get away from a bad relationship. And they said, we've got this new report building package. We're early adopters of this fancy website called Salesforce. And I said, it can't be that much different to Crystal Reports and all the other things that I have to use to build BI with. And they said, no, you'll like it. So before I'd even logged in for the first time, I was invited to go to Dreamforce Europe, as it was then. And this was 2008. And it was at the Barbican. I remember thinking it was hot and sticky and just a really not very good venue. But my first breakout session I went to was about workflow rules. And after seeing that session, I couldn't wait. I was chomping at the bit to get back to the office and start working on things. Probably the most dangerous kind of admin there is. But I think if I fast forward by about 18 months, I started to really like Salesforce, and I started, this was before Classic. This was Classic with the grey buttons. You remember those? It was lovely. But I just loved the fact, and the quick start wizard for reporting. You remember the jump to step? Oh my God. Those were the days. So I was sort of looking after people, and they said, you're going to start looking after the application now. And that was it. I was completely hooked. And I went consulting about 18 months later. I even did a bit of contracting, and then boom, we had Molly come along. And Molly changed a lot of the way that I structured my career, because suddenly I needed to be at home and look after this baby. I was feeding her myself. I was a contractor, and I was also the high earner. And what that meant was, on a practical level, I had to go back to work quite early. But because I was contracting, and a lot of people who work with Salesforce are all quite, even the clients are generally quite flexible. I was in a meeting once sketching out a solution after I'd fed and burped the baby, and then stood in the room, and then stood up and started whiteboarding, and the baby just got passed around for cuddles. It was wonderful, really lovely experience. She didn't remember any of it, but but it was that point when I realised I needed a more stable income, and I wanted to get enterprise experience. I had plenty of mid-market, plenty of corporate, plenty of charity, plenty of small business experience, but no enterprise. So Capgemini offered me a job. And I did a couple of projects there, which actually got me through my dev life cycle exam, which was really good. Sorry, 4 years later. But then I then switched again, and I went to work for an ISV. I went to work for Financial Force. But between signing the paperwork for Financial Force and then starting the job, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was also a week before I was due to get married for the first time. And it was not an easy time. There were lots and lots of, I had pretty much all of the therapy that you can imagine. But the funny thing about chemo is you can actually sit, if they've got decent Wi-Fi in the hospital, you can actually just put your feet up and do a bit of config and maybe do a conference call while you're hooked up, and they're all going, what's that background noise? Oh, don't worry about it. But you can get a lot done. What you can't get done is radio, if you're having radiotherapy, because that's just a bit much. But it gave me a different perspective, and it was when I went back to work that I started to understand that some of the work I was doing in Salesforce was a bit more complicated, and I had several packages to string together into one big solution. And I was talking to IT security people about single sign-on, and we were talking about how to secure the various interfaces that were going on. We were talking about middleware. The conversation was advancing. In pretty much every meeting I was in, I found myself, I wasn't just talking about Salesforce anymore, I was talking about Salesforce as a part of a wider landscape of solutions. And it was roughly around that time I started to realize that the job I was doing was didn't really match the description of the official job I was being paid to do. And an opportunity came up at Blue Wolf, and it was difficult because I was very loyal to Financial Force. They had really looked after me during my sickness. But I had to take a step back and say, do you know what, I've grown from this experience, and now I want to go and do something else. And Blue Wolf took me on, and I did a couple of projects. One was actually based here in Paris, which is an interesting one, with various different outposts in America. And when I hit the bench for a little while, I decided, because I don't know how to sit still, I decided to use my bench time constructively. And I found that Salesforce had released all these exams that you could do. And they were specialized. There was a piece about sharing. There was a piece about data volumes. There was an exam you could do about coding. And there was an exam you could do about mobile solutions. And I was like, oh, right, here we go. This should take up a bit of time. And the great certifications run began last year. And I went from 5 certifications to 15 in about 3 months. Thank you. That's a combination of an opportunity, you know, with bench time, if you're lucky enough to get any bench time in a consultancy firm, but also just having experience in each of those areas. But I still had to study. I spent about 2 weeks studying for each exam. I still have all my notes. And before long, it was my manager at the time when I was working at, when I started at Blue Wolf created that environment for me. They said, if you want to go and do these exams, that's fine, we'll pay for it, off you go. And my manager said to me, you don't have to worry about being, because he said, have you thought about doing CTA? Because he was a CTA. And I said, no, I haven't, not really. He said, I reckon you could do PD1. I said, no, I can't do PD1. He goes, of course you can. Our HR lady's got Platform Developer 1. You know, she just started working on it, and there she is. So I was like, right, okay, well, now you've gone and lit a fire under my backside. So when it got to Christmas, I think my husband and I actually had a certification off. So we both did Community Cloud on one Saturday morning together, one after the other. And then on Christmas Eve, my daughter was at her dad's house, and we decided that we were going to have another cert off. So I did Identity, and he did Service Cloud, and then we celebrated in front of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation with a glass of champagne. And so to reach the top of this pyramid, there's a reason I'm showing you this pyramid, right? Because if you want to be a certified technical architect, there's a reason it's at the very top, okay? And the other thing to talk about, so it is at the very top, and what you have to do to reach eligibility is roughly around this point here, is to become a specialist in both of those domains, which means you have to do all these certifications for both sides of the pyramid. And you've got the application side, which is the purple side, communities, sharing, data, basic development, application building blocks, all of those things. And there are also 2 optional exams that you can do. You can do the communities exam and you can do the Commerce Cloud exam. I personally believe if you want to do the CTA, communities, you need to do communities. There's always communities to consider. And within that, there's a lot of overlaps as well. There's overlaps between community sharing and sharing and visibility, for example. Commerce Cloud, I don't know yet, but it frightens the life out of me. So we'll see. And then on the other side, you have the system side, which is the more technical. So those of you who've worked on Scrum teams, you would be extremely familiar with continuous integration, continuous deployment. You get to have a whole exam on that. Yay. Integration as well, integration architecture, the various types of protocols and APIs. Again, basic development, PD1 appears on both sides, sorry, platform developer 1. That certification is on both sides of the pyramid, so you need to have it. And then the other optional one, which for me was the worst, was mobile solutions architecture. It's got lots of stuff about Visualforce in there. But also, the really good part of that exam was looking at the skill sets that you need and how to decide between a native app versus a hybrid app versus a HTML5 app. That was all really valuable for me because now I can look at a requirement and go, this is going to be a hybrid app because people need to download it from the store. I've only got budget for one mobile development team. I don't want to be writing 2 apps. So that rules native out. People don't want to log in every time. That rules of HTML5 app. Hybrid all the way. Just an example. So what happens when you reach that eligibility? And one of the things that I am quite passionate about at the moment is trying to dispel this myth that as soon as you've reached system architect and you've achieved application architect, which are freebies, once you've completed each side, you get given those certifications because you've reached that status. But it's very easy to convince yourself that now you've got these 2 certs, right, I'll go and book in for the review board next week. It's not like that at all. The review board is a very, very different type of exam. For us, multiple choice exams, we're all used to doing multiple choice exams where you revise and you have to think about the answer to the question and you just have to get through it, right? It's just like, I've got to pass. With this, it's different. If I could go back and redo all of these exams again, I would pace it. I would do it a lot more slowly. I would make sure that everything is going in and I would actually go back to my boss and say, right, I'm studying for integration now. Can you please put me on an integration project? And pace it that way. It doesn't have to be a sprint, it is a marathon more than anything. But you have to celebrate your milestones. So these are your milestones. Your domain architect are your milestones. Once you've got those, you're roughly 60% of the way there, right? But the next thing you have to do is prepare for this. Oh yes, it's the dragon's den. Only these people don't want to invest in you. They're not actual judges. Instead, you actually have to prove to them that you know what you're talking about, that you can design a solution. They might not necessarily agree with the solution you choose, but if you have managed to justify it well enough, and they can't fault it in any way, maybe they might go, that's not the way I would do it, but you know, they gave good reasons. Then that's what you have to do. You're given a hypothetical scenario, and you have to solve it during a presentation. And it is just like pitching for an RFP, but in a very short space of time. It's extremely time boxed. If you run over, it's not a fail, but it definitely doesn't look good. But it also equally doesn't look as good if you finish early either. So you have to convey the whole breadth of your knowledge at the right depth. And that's where the challenge comes from. The majority of people I've spoken to have failed because of time management more than anything else. Speaking of time management, I'm going to move on. So this is how the exam's structured. So this is Susanna. She is our latest co-leader for Ladies Be Architects, and she very kindly took this photo, and I just stole it from her. But you have 2 hours to prepare your artifacts, a series of different artifacts. So you have to do a data model, you have to do an integration diagram, and the whole point of it is it's an opportunity to be creative. You can decide how you want to get your point across. Some people walk in and they draw it in the presentation. Some people will do slides. Some people will draw pictures. I'm very much a picture person. I prefer whiteboards because you can rub it out and it doesn't look so messy. But actually, flip charts help because even if you make a mistake and you cross it out, the judges can see your thought process, and that's really important. So you have 2 hours to do that. You get given a 9-page document, roughly. Please don't say that. And it's full of lots and lots of words, and you have got a very short space of time to go through tick, 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 tick. That is a Visualforce page. That is middleware. That is a private sharing model, etc. When you prepared your presentation, when you prepared your items, you go in and do a 45-minute presentation. Now, this is the lovely Carl Brundage. He smashed his CTA last October, and he very kindly did a workshop for us. And this is him effectively telling us or showing us how he did his data model, but also how he found that method to be useful for him. And the point he was trying to convey is find a way of putting your diagrams over that suits you and where you find it easier to explain. And then you have the Q&A. And you have to sit in front of these very foreboding people who will literally, they are tapping on the computers, they are not looking at you really, they're not making any eye contact. You'd be lucky if you get a smile out of them. So don't try and turn on the charm, it's a waste of time. You have got 45 minutes to do your presentation and then 40 minutes Q&A. But what they're trying to do is to find opportunities to score you. If there's an item that they would like to see, if you've described something in the presentation and you haven't necessarily gone into the right level of detail, that's an opportunity for them to explore that further with you in Q&A and be able to award more points to you, okay? So why bother, right? This sounds horrible. Like, why would you want to go and get a degree in Salesforce, which is harder than doing a degree? Well, the reason being, first of all, is once you've got your CTA, if you are committed to a career in Salesforce and you've got your CTA certification, I've spoken to CTAs who are now in senior level positions and are interviewing other CTAs, and they say, I don't need to do a technical test with these guys. They've done it. I'm not going to give them the post-traumatic stress disorder that goes with going through this again, right? Because it is an ordeal. You speak to a group of CTAs, they've got this magical invisible bond between them. It's the bond of ordeal. But it shows their strength in technical skills. It also shows strength in presentation skills and in gravitas as well. They know they can put you in front of a prospect and you will talk to them truthfully about what solution is going to be right, and you will have a very honest scope coming out of it. It will increase your marketability, your earning potential, and your upward mobility. It will help you if you're a completionist like I am. What's better than finishing this pyramid? You get to earn the toughest but most rewarding Salesforce certification. It gives you some credibility as well. And as women, sometimes we need that extra push as well, especially in a solutioning environment where everybody's egos go on the table. I think this is a custom object. I don't think this is a custom object. Well, why is it a custom object? We've all been in those meetings, right? And it can be hard sometimes as women to get that level of confidence when you have someone sat next to you who is very strong characters as well, not even just women, who you need to have the skill and the ability to justify that. And actually what I found is I've been in that situation where I argued with someone at work over a solution. He then took it to the CTA, who then said, just do that. And it was what I'd said. But the sad thing is that he needed the CTA to endorse that. So there's always going to be that little part of you that needs a little extra kick. But because you can do it, what I'm trying to say is that you can do this, okay? Like I said, you're looking at all of that whole situation, that whole landscape of solutions and things and considerations when you design a system. Even if you have to plot your career trajectory around that, then that's perfectly fine. It doesn't have to happen like next year, next week. It could happen in 5 years. And as I started to prepare for my certs, I found I didn't want to do it alone. You can come and join all these lovely people, and we can all study together, and we can all share experiences together. And the reason that this started was because I didn't want to do it on my own. And I went into the Architect Success community, which is really helpful, got some fantastic resources. It was a beautiful message board. And I wanted to first of all find all the women. I was like, where are all the girls who are doing this with me? Like, there must be some. And I saw a few very familiar names, but it was the same names every time. So I wanted to create an environment of safety where people felt that they could come along and, perhaps get in a smaller group and form small study groups and work together. And I started some monthly webinar study groups where we took on like individual topics and did just an hour a month on one specific topic. Then it became very democratic, and it said, come on, vote for the exam you want to look at. Because I thought, well, some people will be studying, there's no way of knowing what everyone's studying for. And when we started to do these study groups and attend community events and talk about what we were doing, people started to join us. And then my friends at Salesforce joined us as well and started to really plug us at Trailhead DX. If any of you went to DX this year, went on the architect boot camp, there's a big push about getting more women involved. And it's wonderful to see so many women sat here right now as well, because it's really shaken up the interest here. It's another pathway to go down. When we became friends through the community and started working towards our review boards together, Charlie joined us in April this year, and then we asked Susanna to come and join our leadership team after she saw what we were doing, got involved, became very active, and we asked her to come and help as well. She's got an incredibly good skill at public speaking. This community goes beyond the technology. It goes beyond the exams, and it goes beyond the certifications. These people, we all have a seriously deep concern for one another, and we want to help each other. And it starts at the top. I was fortunate enough to meet Mark and Tony at Dreamforce this year, and it helped me realise that it's not just fancy marketing, this Ohana stuff. And people have joked to me, "Oh, Gemma, you're part of a cult." But and yeah, you know, you can ironically joke that, but to me, I've felt that that's real. It's not just fancy marketing. If you go on Twitter and you ask a question, you'll get a whole load of responses back. Some of you here I know from Twitter and from LinkedIn, just through helping and just through sharing stories and sharing abilities. And one of the things that we also do in Ladies Be Architects is we celebrate success. We send everyone a mug. Christine's got one that she got given today because she passed an exam. And we try and do that. It's one thing to get the certificate, but it's even nicer if you get a present for it. And I didn't expect this to grow. I just created a group, and this happened. And we're now on, as at lunchtime, 962 members on the Success community. It's insane. So if you want to come and join us, if you want to come and play, these are the things that we've been doing. We had a party at Dreamforce. We announce every month when people get certifications, we literally call them out, show their faces, congratulate them, and then send them a present. We have just celebrated our first woman CTA in Ladies Be Architects last week, so round of applause for her. And we have fun. We have competitions that we run. We get together. We do our study groups. We've got an architect podcast. And some of the things that have made this so successful as well is the love and support of all of our men as well. Some of whom are in the room right now. But we do call you out as awesome allies. Just show us your T-shirt. He is an awesome ally. But what makes him an awesome ally is the fact that if people are saying you can't join Ladies Be Architects because you're not a lady, he's the first one to go, don't be stupid, of course you can. So it's just little things that support us, and we want to celebrate your success with us. It's important to all of us, especially those of us who are starting to work towards CTA as well. How you can help. We have our Trailblazer community group. That's our primary source. So when we talk about number of members, we go based on that. You can follow us on Twitter. We're quite active. We have a website as well. Somehow that happened. And we also have a lot of recorded content on YouTube. So if you come and find us on YouTube, you've got some mock review boards. You've got some recorded study groups. And we also recently released a hypothetical scenario for you to practice with, that you're more than welcome to have and share and do whatever you want with. Just don't ask Salesforce any questions about it, because I wrote it. So you'll have to ask me. Okay. Challenge people who say that it's too hard, or that it's just for girls, or that you have to be a programmer, because you don't. You have to understand code. You don't have to code. If you believe in what we do and you want to help us to get more people involved, then please feel free to donate to our crowdfunding account, LBA_crowdfund. And what's next for next year? That's going to be mine. Thank you. I've run over very slightly. Any quick questions? Or are you here for next session? You don't count, husband. What's for tea? Don't know. Anyone got any questions? Hi.
Would you pay yourself for the exam?
Would I pay myself for the exam? I'm fortunate enough to work for a company that is willing to fund it. If you want to, then I would say it is a lot of money. It's $6,000. But if you fail it the first time, it's half price. You're investing your time in your career. If it's something you want that badly, then it all the more enforces the fact that it's a marathon rather than a sprint. So you could be saving if you wanted to, or you can donate to us because we want to fund someone to go through. So, does that answer your question? Okay, I'm out of time. Jean-Michel's come to guillotine me.